Tonight we're going to do something a little different. It's going to be a longer piece than usual, and as such I expect lower viewership because people's attention spans require right away. But I do hope you'll bear with me and stick around to the end. Tonight I'm skipping the poetry. We're going with some hard reality. I'll be reading more obviously than is usually the case. Yes. Tonight you're going to meet Tom. Tom is the son and brother and other relativities of some dear friends of mine, who I had breakfast with this morning, and they shared these words with me. He's a world traveler, a humanitarian, and he's most recently found himself living in Ukraine. The following is culled from 2 emails Tom sent to his family in the U.S. recently, starting with the most recent. Thanks, heaps. I am going to need you guys to help out in drumming up small donations, so you won't feel too guilty. Tell everyone you know that we're trying to get humanitarian aid directly to the displaced people in Lviv, approximately 1/3 the number of the usual city size, and materials for body armor. I am working directly with the city on the former, and a manufacturer in Lviv on the latter. You'll be seeing more soon. This is my new full-time job. This is my periodic, if not highly sought-after, update on my Ukrainian war experience and the associated outlook. I'm writing from unseasonably chilly Montenegro, where they seem to have waited for my arrival to deliver this winter's coldest weather. Today's high is near 10 centigrade or 50 Fahrenheit, the highest of our low highs recently. I've shortened my stay here to get back to matters in Ukraine. I'm getting quite a few requests for both analysis of the news coming out of Ukraine as well as how best to donate and help. And so I'll address both of those. I think you all might like to read a little bit about the people I know, or hear. Who is trapped in a hell they never imagined? Who is holding out hope in Western Ukraine? And who is confronted with where to go next in life, starting all over again, from zero. So I've included some personal reality at the end. Analysis of the conditions in Ukraine. I think we're all a bit surprised and probably even more impressed at how well Ukraine is holding out against the amassed Russian forces. There seem to be several reasons to explain this, and weren't fully considered collectively by analysts a few weeks ago, among which taking cities is hard, especially when the civilian population who remains is willfully part of the defense, as in every city in Ukraine in 2022. Putin undoubtedly started to believe his own BS and thought ethnic Russians in Ukraine would willfully become part of his new Russian empire. Ukrainians of all languages are resolved to win or resist, and that spirit is widespread. Obviously, having state-of-the-art weapons to take down jets and punch explosive holes in tank turrets has taken any technological advantage away from Russia. Moreover, U.S. NATO intelligence is constantly being fed to Ukrainian military. I'm not sure how much the foreign legions are active now, but it looks like Ukraine will be adding 20,000 experienced fighters to its ranks, while Russia is losing theirs. It's also clear that many of the Russians are demoralized and really have no desire to be in this fight. This may also explain several bonehead tactics on the Russian side, like being unable to refuel vehicles at the head of a convoy. Even running convoys in single file makes no sense, since taking out the lead vehicles with drones stalls the whole column. Add to that poorly maintained vehicles on the Russian side, and you have inoperable, expensive Russian hardware dotting the Ukrainian countryside. Maintaining heavy fighting vehicles is extremely critical and expensive, and something that can get overlooked when you're trying to build reserves in anticipation of economic sanctions. And kleptocracies themselves are expensive. Having Zelensky stay in Kyiv at the command has been extremely motivating. While all this is encouraging, it has one terrible consequence: indiscriminate shelling and bombing of Ukrainian cities. This will only get worse as it becomes normalized within the Russian ranks. As Ukraine's response and the global sanctions become more daunting, Putin becomes wedged between a stupid war and his ego/legacy. The likely consequence of this is desperation and escalation. Escalation is unavoidable. The idea that we can opt out of escalating the war is a false choice unless you're just willing to give Putin everything. I'm not sure what everything is, but we do know it does not end at the borders of Ukraine. Putin has neither the time nor resources he had 8 years ago, let alone going back to 2008 and the invasion of Georgia. If he is going to achieve his goals, he is going to use more and more harsh measures, and will not bother to cover them up like he was partially able to do with Donbass and Crimea 8 years ago. I really believe the only choice we have is when we say enough is enough. And obviously any day that we wait, the damages and the deaths will be more. If you're still not convinced, and I am not 100% convinced either, ask yourself why beating Putin one way or the other would keep him from going too far, as if he hasn't already gone too far. If he has the capacity to escalate, isn't he going to escalate based on his desire to achieve his goals and not based on the nature of his opposition? I know these are not happy thoughts, but we've swept our Putin problem under the rug again and again, and it has never gotten better. It has spared no lives over time, but rather cost us more lives and economic woes in the aggregate. Just think if we would have been honest with ourselves back in 2008 and moved to ban Russian oil and gas then. Some personal stories. I'm sure you all know some folks who are directly touched by this, or that you have been able to learn about on the news through social media. Still, I think the range of experience is telling. I'd say about 50% of my regular contacts in Lviv are still in Ukraine, but the number is diminishing. My bestie there, Olia, is volunteering doing interpretation into Russian and English for national TV and radio for about 12 hours a day. She feels happily useful, but exhausted. Her partner, Ihor, just asked me the other night about the train connection to Budapest. His mother decided rather suddenly to leave Ukraine. This is a 50-something-year-old woman who speaks no other language than Ukrainian and Russian, and is likely going to Dublin, where Ihor's sister lives, but has to navigate a wholly unfamiliar world without her husband or children, and any useful languages. It's not among the most traumatic stories. But can you imagine the helplessness the average person must be feeling? The upside is Olia's worst-case scenario of living with her mother-in-law seems delayed for the foreseeable future. On the more painful end of the spectrum, my most recent ex in Lviv was already out of Ukraine by the time the war started. She's originally from the east, in the area between Dnipro and Zaporizhia, and her parents are stuck there, despite our several offers to help them get out sooner. Over the last weekend, they were stuck in their freezing basement, with no running water, little heat, or electricity for 3 days. When they had the opportunity, they relocated to the center of Zaporizhia, but since then contact has been lost. Fingers crossed. Of my dozens of friends and contacts in Kiev and Kharkiv, only one has remained at the hotel where she works in Kiev. She's given up going to the underground parking garage with the air raid sirens because she wasn't sleeping at all. She hears artillery regularly, maybe no more than blocks away, but there has been no street fighting near her. Other folks have dispersed to southern or western Ukraine or outside the country. Most are in Poland, but people are moving around trying to save dwindling savings. These folks have bank cards, but not credit cards. How can you help? And what is my plan? Now, to the most commonly asked questions that I get, and I'm developing some quality answers. I personally have been the beneficiary of the massive Airbnb community donations, receiving dozens of bookings for my apartment in Lviv from Americans coast to coast. They all basically say the same thing. We're obviously not coming, so please use this money as you see fit. I get choked up just thinking about the amazing outpouring of generosity. Yet I'm not sure this is the best way for you folks to contribute. I think the easiest and most efficient way to donate is through the National Bank of Ukraine. At www.bank.gov.ua/en, you'll see the option to donate directly to the military or humanitarian needs. It accepts credit cards, so get those points and save some lives. Live link down below. For those who want to consider a more personal, nearly hands-on experience with yours truly, Tom, I'm working on a supply run. What we're hearing in Lviv is that we most need tents and such for our newest residents, as well as tactical helmets and bulletproof vests. So I am looking into vehicles on both sides of the border to collect and then distribute these necessities. Now, this may change in the coming weeks, but it will take me this long to gather the pricing, the necessary funds, contact the potential suppliers, and then put it all together. I plan to do a run to Lviv in about 3 weeks and then to distribute out from there. In 2 weeks, we will reassess the needs and then try another run a few weeks later if we're successful with this first one. How can you help? If you have any insider knowledge on these items, let me know. I know that we're already running up against some international trade restrictions on body armor, and that many manufacturers are already booked months out. But I'm not giving up just yet. Now, if you're already bored with whinging about high gasoline prices and really want to get your hands dirty, we can talk about helping out on the ground over here. Beyond that, I'm thinking about the more distant future and reconstruction. I think there's little doubt that Ukraine is going to come back stronger from this should we prevail in the streets of combat. And that's only a matter of time. The U.S. Congress and governments around the world are already planning on huge support. But there's also going to be major private sector opportunities in housing and logistics, warehousing. I want to start pooling together folks who like the idea of investing profitably in Ukraine. My experience in the 4 years until now has been about a 20% return on U.S. dollars, even with the pandemic figured in. That's obviously not the only priority in this case, but it's certainly more sustainable if we can get folks interested in investing and not just donating to Ukraine. Again, if you know folks who are interested in this subject, please share this. For me and Tom. For the next update, I'm hoping to report on our supply run plans, but would love it if we could skip straight to the reconstruction subject. Tom. Again, the live links will be down there, but that's bank.gov.ua/en to donate to the Ukrainian bank. And Tom Gallagher 72 at gmail.com. If you want to contact Tom directly, please do. Thank you for bearing with me. We got to do something. I'm sure I'll have more from Tom at some point in the future. Let's wish him and all the people of Ukraine and the Russians who don't want to be fighting there but are good health, long life, and peace. Thank you all. I'll see you tomorrow.